Arawak News. Just a quick update on how I came across this information. I came across a newspaper called Old Timer News and an article where it warns of biowarfare. The article was written in February of this year, but it actually writes about an FBI agent who in 2014 was warning about the dangers of biowarfare. Also in that article they talk about a Dr. Reuben Swinburne Clymer who in 1958 was actually warning of the use of liquids as a medium for controlling humanity. I'm actually uploading a video after this about that and about the premise of his investigations and the types of things that they would be doing. Now in his book, which is actually called Your Health, Your Sanity in the Age of Treason, he identifies a couple of the major players in this eugenics program that's run by the elite to maintain control, and one of these major players is actually Bertrand Russell. Now Bertrand Russell is actually a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and he has written several books, and this particular one was about how science affects man, and I'm going to be uploading a video on that also, about what he says about cotton picking and who was picking the cotton. So it came full circle to being about us, although at the time it seemed as if I'd kind of strayed off slightly from the information that I was picking up with regards to the immigrants of Jamaica. And again, with Bertrand Russell took me right back to Cobden and the propaganda re the slavery of whites, because as we know this was very much against the monarchy at the time, but we see quite clearly that the corporations took over and we have now what we call free trade. So again, as I say, just a quick intro as to how I came across this information, 6 degrees of separation at the end of the day. So here we go, let's look at biowarfare. Flashback. FBI agent warned in 2014 that synthetic biology could reduce our population. This is an article from Old Thinker News. I came across this while looking at some flat earth research, and this was in February 12 of this year by Daniel Taylor. 2018 DoD commissioned report warned of new bioweapons developed with synthetic biology. In 2014, Old Thinker News reported on startling comments made by FBI agent Carmine Negro at an MTI conference on synthetic biology. The agent was quoted by the New York Times as saying regarding synthetic biology, "These technologies do not just pose a risk to individual buildings or cities, but, if cleverly deployed, can reduce our population by significant percentages." Biowarfare expert Dr. Francis Boyle, who drafted the Biological Weapons Act, has stated that the coronavirus outbreak in China is likely a man-made virus. In 2018, the National Academy of Sciences sounded the alarm over the rise of new biological weapons as a result of synthetic biology tech. Read the full NAS report here. The report highlighted 3 major threats from synthetic biology: recreating known pathogenic viruses, making existing bacteria more dangerous, and using microbes to produce harmful biochemical in humans. And this new report from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine considers how synthetic biology capabilities affect the biodefense threat landscape and identifies the capabilities that pose the greatest relative concern. The report also discusses some current approaches for mitigating concerns about the malicious use of biotechnology, how synthetic biology may challenge these approaches, and conversely, how synthetic biology may help address challenges or bolster mitigating approaches. All right. So this is the original article by Daniel Taylor, May 28, 2014. FBI agent synthetic biology can reduce our population by significant percentages. And I've also got a link to the New York Times. I'll run through that article as well. The New York Times reported earlier this month on a conference held at MIT on May 1st that discussed synthetic biology. The conference gathered an interesting group of scientists and Homeland Security representatives. One of the law enforcement speakers at the conference was FBI agent Carmine Negro. This is looks like the same article. Okay, it looks like it's slightly more detailed than the first article, so let's run through it. So we've got Carmine Negro, which I find an interesting name, and I wasn't expecting it to be a he, but he is quoted by the Times as saying, regarding synthetic biology, these technologies do not just pose a risk to individual buildings or cities, but if cleverly deployed can reduce our population by significant percentages. FBI agent Carmine Negro's PowerPoint presentation. Oh, we have a link to the presentation. Okay, let's have a look. Began ominously with a quote from philosopher Edmund Burke, when bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. This disturbing comment comes as synthetic biology is being quietly inserted into the food supply this year via synthetic. Who drafted the Biological Weapons Act has given a detailed statement admitting that the 2019 Wuhan coronavirus is an offensive biological warfare. In an explosive interview, Dr. Francis Boyle, who drafted the Biological Weapons Act, has given a detailed statement admitting that the 2019 Wuhan coronavirus is an offensive biological warfare weapon that the World Health Organization (WHO) already knows about it. Francis Boyle is a professor of international law at the University of Illinois College of Law. He drafted the U.S. domestic implementing legislation for the Biological Weapons Convention, known as the Biological Weapons Act, Terrorism Act of 1989, that was approved unanimously by both houses of the U.S. Congress and signed into law by the President George H.W. Bush. In an exclusive interview given to Geopolitics and Empire, Dr. Boyle discusses the coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan, China, and the Biosafety Level 4 laboratory, BSL-4, from which he believes the infectious disease escaped. He believes the virus is potentially lethal and an offensive biological warfare weapon or dual-use biowarfare weapons agent, genetically modified with gain-of-function properties, which is why the Chinese government originally tried to cover it up and is now taking drastic measures to contain it. The Wuhan BSL-4 lab is also a specially designated World Health Organization research lab, and Dr. Boyle contends that the WHO knows full well what is occurring. Dr. Boyle, who touches upon Great Game India's exclusive report, Coronavirus Bioweapon, where he reported in detail how Chinese biowarfare agents working at the Canadian lab in Winnipeg were involved in the smuggling of coronavirus to Wuhan's lab, from where it is believed to have been leaked. So it was leaked from the Wuhan lab but taken from Canada. Or they took it from Wuhan to Canada. Okay. So that's the interview. Dr. Boyle's position is in stark contrast to the mainstream media's narrative of the virus being originated from the seafood market, which is increasingly being questioned by many experts. See, that's just one of the ways that they attack certain industries as well. So everyone's going to be scared of eating seafood right now. Recently, American Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas also dismantled the mainstream media's claims on Thursday that pinned the coronavirus outbreak on a market selling dead and live animals. This is in a video accompanying his post, Cotton explained that the Wuhan wet market, which Cotton incorrectly referred to as a seafood market, has been shown by experts to not be the source of the deadly contagion. Cotton referenced a Lancet study which showed that many of the first cases of the novel coronavirus included patient 0 had no connection to the wet market, devastatingly undermining mainstream media's claim. As one epidemiologist said, that virus went into the seafood market before it came out of the seafood market. We don't know where it originated, Cotton said. I would note that Wuhan also has China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that works with the world's most deadly pathogens, to include, yes, coronavirus. So here we have China claims for almost 2 months that coronavirus had originated in a Wuhan seafood market. That is not the case. The Lancet published that. No contact with the market whatsoever. Such concerns have also been raised by J.R. Nyquist, the well-known author of the book Origins of the Fourth World War and The Fool and His Enemy, as well as co-author of The New Tactics of Global War. In his insightful article, he published secret speeches given to high-level Communist Party cadres by Chinese Defense Minister General Chai Holtan, explaining a long-range plan for ensuring a Chinese national renaissance, the catalyst for which would be China's secret plan to weaponize viruses. What can you say? The loonies, the mad people are running the world. Nyquist gave 3 different data points for making his case in analysing coronavirus. He writes, the third data point worth considering. The journal Great Game India has published a piece titled Coronavirus Bioweapon, How China Stole Coronavirus from Canada and Weaponized It. So it's what I thought. The authors were clever enough to put Khan's Virology Journal article together with news of a security breach by Chinese nationals at the Canadian P4 National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg, where the novel coronavirus was allegedly stored with other lethal organisms. I can't help stumbling every time they call it novel, funny, novel, fiction, you know. Okay, let's continue. Last May, all these word spells, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were called in to investigate by late July, the Chinese were kicked out of the facility. The chief Chinese scientist, Dr. Zhanggu Klu, was allegedly making trips between Winnipeg and Wuhan. Here we have a plausible theory of the NCOV organism's travels. First discovered in Saudi Arabia, then studied in Canada, from whence it was stolen by a Chinese scientist and brought to Wuhan. Like the statement of Taiwan's intelligence chief in 2008, the Great Game India story has come under intensive attack. Whatever the truth, the fact is proximity and the unlikelihood of mutation must figure into our calculations. It is highly probable that the 2019 NCOV organism is a weaponized version of the NCOV discovered by Saudi doctors in 2012. Meanwhile, the mainstream media's narrative still maintains that the origin of the 2019 coronavirus is the Wuhan seafood market. After Great Game India published the story on coronavirus bioweapon, not only were our database tinkered with and our reports blocked by Facebook on the flimsy reason that they could not find Great Game Media India Facebook page, but the report itself was viciously attacked by a foreign policy magazine, PolitiFact, known widely as Facebook's propaganda arm, and BuzzFeed News. Alright. So this is when they start attacking the people who are speaking out against what the media is saying. It is not Great Game Media India alone which has been viciously attacked. Zero Hedge, a popular alternate media blog, was suspended by Twitter for publishing a story related to a study by Indian scientists finding 2019 Wuhan coronavirus to be not naturally evolved, raising the possibility of it being created in a lab. Not surprisingly, I mean, I think quite recently, didn't they kick Bill Gates out because they found him behaving very suspiciously around in vaccinations? They were secretly sterilizing women. So shockingly, the study itself came under intense online criticism by social media experts, resulting in the scientists withdrawing the paper. In retaliation, India has launched a full-scale investigation against China's Wuhan Institute of Virology. The Indian government has ordered an inquiry into a study conducted in the northeastern state of Nagaland, close to China, by researchers from the US, China and India on bats and humans carrying antibodies to deadly viruses like Ebola, another patented disease. That Hegelian dialect where they create something and then they have to, well, they create the cure first and then they create the problem. The study came under the scanner as 2 of the 12 researchers belonged to the Wuhan Institute of Virology's Department of Emerging Infectious Diseases, and it was funded by the United States Department of Defense's Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. The study, conducted by scientists of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, the National Center for Biological Sciences, NCBS, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences in the US, and the Duke National University in Singapore, is now being investigated for how the scientists were allowed to access live samples of bats and bat hunters, humans, without due permissions. The results of the study were published in October last year in the PLOS Neglected Topical Disease Journal, originally established by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Oh, that's interesting. As the author J.R. Nyquist puts it, We must have an investigation of the outbreak in Wuhan. The Chinese must grant the world total transparency. The truth must come out. Oh, so... Wait. If Chinese officials are innocent, they have nothing to hide. If they are guilty, they will refuse to cooperate. The real concern here is whether the rest of the world has the courage to demand a real and thorough investigation. We need to be fearless in this demand and not allow economic interests to play a coy and dishonest game of denial. We need an honest inquiry. We need it now, says the Bill Gates Foundation, who are staunch eugenicists. So, the World Health Organization said that China should be respected for the way they are handling the coronavirus outbreak. Savannah Hernandez details all the ways the country is still lying to the rest of the world and the awful conditions its citizens are subjected to. Okay, so that's enough on that one. I think actually it's actually quite funny that the Bill Gates Foundation is actually speaking up against a viral attack in China. It's almost as if they're saying, what? You mean you're poisoning people? No, stop, we want to sterilize them first. It's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But truly the nutters are running the world. The psychopaths are running the world. Because this is a depopulation agenda which all goes in with my other video, which I'm going to be putting up about Bertram Russell. A Synthetic Biology Conference Lures an Intriguing Audience by John Markoff. Cambridge, Massachusetts, May 9th, 2014. When does a scientific conference warrant the attention of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Homeland Security? When the topic is synthetic biology. Both of these federal agencies turned out on May the 1st to monitor the proceedings here at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and a representative from the FBI even spoke. Their attendance, as well as a lively discussion about the science and ethics of synthetic biology, sheds light on how much attention is being focused on this rapidly advancing field of science. Synthetic biology, a 20-year-old engineering pursuit that tries to extend the genetic code with artificial nucleotides, promises to produce advances in medical therapies, materials, and biological computing akin to animal and human cognition. The field received new impetus this week when researchers at the Scripps Research Institute published a paper in the journal Nature saying they had created an organism by adding artificial genetic code to its DNA, specifically 2 new nucleotides that they named X and Y, in addition to the existing natural nucleotides of A, C, and G. Specifically 2 new nucleotides that they named X and Y, in addition to the existing natural nucleotides of A, C, G, and T. As Andrew Pollock reported in the New York Times, the accomplished might eventually lead to organisms that can make medicines or industrial products that cells with only the natural genetic code cannot. Alicia Jackson, a former Massachusetts Institute of Technology materials scientist, presented her work in this field at the symposium organized by the Center for Bits and Atoms, an MIT research group that focuses on new design and manufacturing technologies. Dr. Jackson has a new Defense Department project that she has named Living Foundries. In April, the Pentagon's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency underscored the significance of the project when they created an office, the Biological Technologies Office, with Dr. Jackson as Deputy Director. What we're interested in is how to harness the power of biology to make materials, she said in her symposium presentation. The goal of Living Foundries is to start speaking about how do we use biology to create things like polymers and catalysts, as well as really new types of materials. Neil Gershenfeld, a physicist who is the director of the Center for Bits and Atoms, said that the improvement in the capacity to read and write biological genes has given rise to the possibility of spectacular advances, like the ability to use a computer to design a complete genome, output it, insert it in a cell, and, in effect, create life from scratch. The new abilities, he noted, raised ethical questions that are as yet unanswered. When the ability to convert biology to data and data into biology becomes that cheap, that agile, that easy to do, what are the consequences, he said. He added, the most exciting and frightening thing I saw this morning was a slide talking about designing and synthesizing genomes next to a slide describing a human being. These kinds of concerns would explain the presence of the federal law enforcement representatives. In his own presentation, the FBI agent Carmine Negro bluntly warned, these technologies do not just pose a risk to individual buildings or cities, but, if cleverly deployed, can reduce our population by significant percentages. So this is Neil Gershenfeld of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology says that synthetic biology, which involves the creation of biological systems intended for specific purposes, can generate scientific advances as well as ethical questions. Okay, so we're back to Carmine Negro, also saying that it is a responsibility that we owe as members of the intelligence community and hope you will share with us. Other speakers included biologists, physicists, computer scientists, and mechanical engineers, who outlined new design techniques, applications like one for personalized medical treatments, and ambitious efforts to revive extinct species such as the passenger pigeon and the woolly mammoth. George Church, a Harvard biologist and a pioneer in sequencing the human genome, spoke about what he described as the creation of radical new genomes. Why do we want to make radical new genomes rather than making subtle changes that might be sufficient? He asked. The advantages, he said, include the ability to design new safeguards, new virus resistance, and new chemistry. John Glass, a member of the group at the J. Craig Venture Institute that in 2010 fabricated the first synthetic cell, described his current research. It has inspired our group to go from this initial synthetic organism to try to build what we refer to as a true minimal cell, he said. Building such a living organism will be an invaluable aid to deeper understanding of basic biological processes, he declared. Ryan Fellon, a biotechnology entrepreneur, described the efforts of Revive and Restore, a project of the Long Now Foundation, a San Francisco non-profit dedicated to making long-term thinking more common. The project is trying to use genetic engineering techniques to restore the passenger pigeon, a migratory bird that flocked by the billions in the United States before the turn of the last century. This species was hunted out of existence after the invention of the telegraph and railroad made it possible for humans to efficiently track the birds. She described the increasing rate of extinction events, particularly ones affecting bird species. The field of conservation is at a low point, she said. All you hear is bad stories. What we are trying to do is bring an influx of technology and hope to the field of conservation. But The risks and concerns involved in synthetic biology were made clear by an absence as much by the presence of the law enforcement officials and the ambitious aspirations of the scientists who presented. Huan Ming Yang, chairman of Beijing Genomics Institute, the world's largest sequencing research institute, was scheduled to deliver the keynote address at the event, but was denied a visa by the United States government. In his absence, the institute research was described by Laurie Goodman, editor of Gigascience, a data science journal. She noted that the inclusion of the Chinese research group in the Human Genome Project was the first such Chinese involvement in an international scientific collaboration. 10 years later, BGI was one of the largest genomics research institutes in the world, and now it's global, she said. The day after the symposium, Dr. Church participated in a public conversation at the MIT Media Laboratory, where he is now a visiting fellow. In contrast to the technical focus of the previous day's symposium, he discussed some of the more speculative possibilities of the new technologies. Last year, he noted he was able to encode the text of his book about synthetic biology, Regenesis, into DNA, and then grow more than 70 million copies, in effect printing more than the sum of the 100 most popular books ever written. He said that the new method had attracted attention from archivists who were looking for better technologies to preserve human culture. Not only does such a technique offer long-lasting storage, but it has more than 1 million times denser. Not only does such a technique offer long-lasting storage, but it is more than 1 million times denser than today's electronic storage technologies. All in all, he said, the concerns about gene therapy are overstated. When it does get to the point where it is incredibly cheap to do it, it will also be incredibly cheap to reverse it as well, he said. We're augmented, and we need to get used to it. He grew a book. That's interesting. He grew a book. Wow. What that paper is actually saying. We're going to get all biological now. This is Nature, a semi-synthetic organism with an expanded genetic alphabet. And here we have Denis A. Malishev, Kirandeep Dharmi, Thomas Laverne, Tingjan Chen, Nandai, Jeremy Foster, Ivan Correa, and Floyd Roomsberg. And it's an article. Abstract. From the article, organisms are defined by the information encoded in their genomes, and since the origin of life, this information has been encoded using a 2-base pair genetic alphabet, A and T and C, G and C. In vitro, the alphabet has been expanded to include several unnatural base pairs, UPBs, 1, 2, 3. We have developed a class of UBPs formed between nucleotides bearing hydrophobic nucleobases, exemplified by the pair formed between D5SICS, D56, and DNAM, D56 to DNAM, which is efficiently PCR amplified and transcribed in vitro, and whose unique mechanism of replication has been characterized. However, expansion of an organism's genetic alphabet presents new and unprecedented challenges. The unnatural nucleotides, trisophates, must be available inside the cell. Endogenous polymerases must be able to use the unnatural tryptophates to faithfully replicate DNA containing the the UBP within the complex cellular milieu, and finally the UBP must be stable in the presence of pathways that maintain the integrity of DNA. So in other words, whatever they've put inside, whatever gene splicing code they've put in, it has to behave naturally. Let's see if it does. Here we show that an exogenously expressed algal nucleotide trisophate transporter efficiently imports the trisophates of both D56 and DNAM. D56 TP and DNAM TP into Escherichia coli, and that the endogenous replication machinery uses them to accurately replicate a plasmid containing D56 and DNAM. Neither the presence of the unnatural trisophates nor the replication of the UBP introduces a notable growth burden. Lastly, we find that the UPB is not efficiently exercised by DNA repair pathways. Thus, the resulting bacterium is the first organism to propagate stably in expanded genetic alphabet. Okay, so if you want the full article, you can get it for $8.99 to rent it or to buy it.